I'm Sue Zecco.
And I'm Jay Scruggs, and we're going to be working on Rex today as our demo for our Wahl products that we're going to be using. And Sue and I are both Wahl Clipper Corporation representatives, and we travel around the country and do seminars and try to teach people to groom. And so today we're going to show you some of our tips and techniques and show you how to use the equipment the proper way. I'm going to start out with his prep work. What we mean by prep work is basically the work we would do before the bath, as far as shaving the pads, as far as shaving his underside, and his little private or sanitary area. So I'm going to start out using the Bravura clipper, and this clipper is a corded. You can use it corded or cordless, and it has an adjustable blade on it, and it goes from a 9, 10, 15, 30, and 40, all with the click of this little button here. So we can adjust our blade while we're using it. And the Bravura, the Cremato that we have here, and the Mosier Arco clipper, they all use the same blades. So they're all universal blades that will work on all three of these clippers. And the great thing about them is they don't get hot when you're using them. So I'm going to start out with his sanitary, and I'm just going to flip my switch on down to a 15 blade. And I'm using the Bravura clipper. Just going to clean up this area. I usually go right up to about where the hair, there's usually a cowlick there and the hair grows in a different direction. So I'll come right up past his little private area here. And I'm just going to clean all of this up, make this nice and neat.
Now this is such a lightweight clipper that it's very, very comfortable in your hand. You can see how easily Jay can maneuver around the dog and around his private parts. And like he said, being able to do all your poodle feet without having to stop. I haven't used coolants on my blades in years. You don't have to use any kind of spray on these blades at all. They will stay nice and cool to the touch. At best, they're slightly warm, but nothing you would ever have to stop and switch blades for.
And you never want to spray a Cool Lube or any type of coolant on these particular clippers, because that'll actually eat the plastic and then the screws start to come out with these clippers. So the only thing you should have to do is oil them, and we'll show you later on in the DVD how to oil your blades properly. So I'm going to switch. You can see I just flip my button or move my finger down to a 30 blade setting.
Good boy.
And I've got his paw in my hand, and I basically take the nail on the further side and the nail on the inside of the toe, and I just squeeze those nails together with my hand that I'm holding the foot with. That allows me to get in this area and to be able to clip that a little bit easier.
Good boy, Rex.
So, and this is basically the reason we do this is because when we go back to scissor the foot later on, we don't want to have to deal with all this hair. This helps the dog running around the house. He won't slip on your kitchen floors or your hardwood floors. It gives them a little bit better traction, and it keeps the feet a little bit cleaner.
And you can see that the techniques that Jay just used in doing him, for one thing, because the clipper doesn't get hot, you don't have to worry about that. It's very, very light to the touch, and it actually runs pretty quietly. This dog typically doesn't like having his feet touched, but he actually just kind of stood very still for all of that. So
now, one thing you want to do, especially if you're a new groomer, a lot of groomers just tend to, they pick up a clipper and they'll hold it almost like, hold it in this position, and they start clipping like this. So their natural tendency, if you pick up the clipper like this, is to get into the coat and pull backwards. And what happens is it's not a good range of motion for your hand, and it's very hard to get around the whole dog if you're clipping a dog in that direction. So we usually try to hold our clipper more like a pencil. So when we're going through the coat, you can adjust your wrist very easily to get this clipper through the dog's coat. So that's what I'm going to show you with the KM2. This is a 2-speed clipper. It's got a low speed and a high speed. This is great for cutting through your matted dogs. It's got a lot of power to it. And the new KM2 actually comes with this little tool. And what this tool does, it allows you to get the lever off without having to take the whole assembly apart and take the screws out of the clipper and change the lever. So the only thing you have to do to change the lever on these once they get worn down is you take your tool, you put it right over the tip, like this, and it just pops off. So that's the only thing you have to do. When your tip gets worn down, your blade starts rattling, just take that tip off, you can pop a new one back on. It's just as easy as that.
About 3 seconds to replace it. And one of the ways to know that your lever does, it's the drive lever that causes, allows your the second part of your blade to go back and forth. And from being put on and off, you'll notice the edges of it almost get kind of like a rusty look from the metal of the blade, and they'll start to wear down on the edges, and it'll cause a lot of noise and rattle to your clipper. So usually when your clipper starts sounding pretty loud, it's usually just something as simple as changing out that lever. And now they've made it so easy that it only takes 3 seconds to do, so it's not a big project that you have to wait till the end of the day for.
Now what I'm going to do with him, we have the new version. These are the snap-on combs. They're stainless steel snap-on combs, and they fit directly over a Wahl Competition Series 30 blade, 15 blade, or a 10 blade. So, and the reason we like the stainless steel snap-on combs is because they feed through the coat a lot better than your old plastics, or a lot better than a blade. And the reason is they have so much space in between each teeth, it allows the blade to get down into the coat, and you get a lot more cutting space. So this dog normally gets done with a 4 or a 4F blade, and what we found with the 4Fs and the 5Fs, there's so much metal on this blade, and you see the teeth are a little bit closer together, so as you're going through a coat like a Bichon poodle type coat, it starts to push the hair down, and you wind up having to fluff it up and keep going over and over it again. So we're going to do, in place of the 4 blade, we're going to do a number 4 which is a 1/4 inch cut on this little guy here. So whenever we're clipping, this dog just gets a short haircut. It's just a maintenance cut. But whenever we're clipping a dog, I start out right at the back of the skull if I'm going to take this dog short. So I start right at the back of the skull. And my first line that I make with my clipper, I'm going to go from the back skull all the way down to the tail, because I know this dog's getting the same length cut all over its body. And especially if you have a really thick dog, this allows you some cutting room. Once you get this hair off, you can kind of work your way from this point all around the dog. You'll notice I'm holding it like a pencil, and just letting my wrist basically do the work.
And you know you have a clipper that's working correctly when it just glides through the coat like this. It's not leaving any drag marks. Most times if you're clipping a dog, a lot of your sporting dogs, you tend to get a lot of drag marks. And there's different reasons for that. If your clipper isn't running up to par, then definitely that's going to cause drag marks on the dog's coat. Also, if your blade isn't as sharp as it should be, that'll cause drag marks. And a lot of times if you're in a hurry and you're pushing that clipper faster than the blade is able to go, that's going to cause drag marks. So with the KM2, and this is just on the low speed, this clipper really has so much power to it that it really allows you to glide through the coat. And as you can see, it gives you a very nice plush finish.
Now you can see what I'm doing is I'm coming around, and this isn't a drop coated breed, this is more of a fluffy or a curly coated breed, so I don't want to come in and go opposite the direction that the hair grows. I'm trying just to follow the pattern that's on this dog. So I get the hair off the back, I get the hair off the body. I'll come in right here where Adam's apple is. This dog gets a pretty short face anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off underneath, because they like them to be pretty short.
Nothing extra on Rex. Now, with these snap-on combs, they actually come in a kit, and there's 8 combs that come to the set. Now, the nice thing, being one of the Wahl stylists, what they did was they actually brought all the stylists to the company. They gave us dogs to work on, and they gave us equipment to play with. And the snap-on combs were, because they were metal, they were very different. They weren't anything that the industry had seen before. Once we actually tried them and were able to cut through a dog's coat and felt how nicely they glided through the dog's coat, we just thought they were fantastic. So we added a few tips. One of the nice things is that they're color coded. So instead of having to hit the comb in just the right light, or for us aging groomers that really can't see the numbers all that well, the color coding is fantastic. They have along the side of the case here, they have the numbers and the letters. The letters are the longer blades that are really good for doing legs. They have the number, the color, and the length that the blade will leave. All right here, so they're very easy to pick up. Now, one of the things that you want to remember with the snap-on combs is they do require a little bit more TLC than the plastic combs, but they're so worth it. As Jay had said before, there's actually a lip on both sides, so these attach from all four sides, which is really a very, very nice feature because these combs will not pop off. So you can actually go through a tangled coat with these combs and they won't pop off. But the one thing you want to remember when you put them on, and this is with all snap-on combs, the first thing you want to do is attach from this back metal piece here. This is a very thin metal, so it's very easy to bend and break. So what you want to do is you hook that in first. So once I have that hooked on the back of my blade, there's a spring action. I want to make sure that it's squarely lined up, and all I'm going to do is just push it forward and let the blade drop, let the comb drop over my blade so it's sitting nice and square. And it's attached from here, it's attached from the front and from the back. So I can get through any kind of coat, and it's not going to, well, of course we don't recommend you go through a matted coat, but it will actually cut through tangles. Now when you're taking them off, that's another problem that people are having because most times groomers are in a hurry and what they're doing is they're just pulling back and taking them off. You want to do the same thing. You're going to push that back part up so it releases in the front and then let it fall back off your clipper. Don't just bend it off because that's going to bend these little pieces here. So you want to be sure that you spend that little extra time, get yourself in the habit of when you're putting them on and off, you do it in a little bit more gentle manner. Also with these blades, the outside teeth on them are a thicker metal, so they give it a lot more stability. But the inside ones, as Jay had said before, they're a little bit thinner and they'll go through every coat type. These will cut through a double-coated breed, you know, some of your chows and things that get shaved down, where a regular 4-blade skips over that really thick haunch hair, these snap-on combs will glide through. And that's why these have to be as narrow as they are. But they do bend easily. So when you're putting your clipper down, I hang my clipper up so that way it's not banging. It doesn't really take a lot to put this down and have these bend on you. So they do require a little bit more TLC than maybe what you're used to with the plastic ones, but they'll last you forever. They really have a very long lifetime on them.
Now, one thing I wanted to show, when you're clipping dogs, any breed, if I'm doing my clipper work, I always want to make sure my opposite hand is on the dog's body. And what I'll do with my opposite hand is I'll pull the skin tight, and as I pull the skin tight, that gives me a smoother cutting surface because most of the dogs will have little lumps or little rolls in them. So if I pull this skin tight and I cut through it with my snap-on comb, I'm going to get a lot smoother finish. That way you don't have to keep going over and over the dog. But another added bonus with these snap-on combs is if you get a dog like this, when you look at this dog up close, he's got a really thin coat. If you were to use a 4-blade, that's going to be a little bit shorter and you'll make him a little bit too short where you're seeing a lot of skin. So with these snap-on combs, I can make it look more like he's got a scissor finish on him. So now I've got my body work done, so I'm going to come down. When I go to groom the inside of the back leg, I'm going to pick up the opposite leg and also hold the tail in my hand because that tail always seems to find a way over to where your blade is. So I'm going to cut the inside of the leg, and then you'll get down to this spot where you can't get to the hock, and I'll usually just use my hand and lift the dog's leg off the table just a little bit so I can get to that area. And then the same thing as I'm cutting around this dog's foot, I'll just pick him up off the table just slightly so he's still in a natural position. And that'll allow me to get all around this dog's foot and cut this in nice and neat. Then I'll take the knee and I'll just give it a little bit of a twist so it sticks out. That way I can get in at this angle and cut that a lot easier.
These snap-on combs have saved us so much time in our shops because they do give a nice finish that you don't have to go over the dogs. So most of my standard poodles, it used to take me close to 2 hours to completely hand scissor the entire dog. I can use a snap-on comb on like a lamb, what I would call a lamb trim. I use a snap-on comb on the body. You can even go to a longer snap-on comb and do a lot of skimming on the legs, and then you just basically have to kind of touch up. You don't have to go over the work that you've already done.
Well, you'll notice even in this area, this is a real sensitive area. It's really easy to cut. So I'll take this skin and I'll pull it up tight. That way I don't have any chance of my blade catching that. And that allows me to be able to clip this dog's hair without having the chance of nicking it or cutting it.
These combs are also sold in single packages also. Singularly, is that a word?
No. Okay, so now I'm going to check my work. I'm going to lift him up. Still going in the same direction that we have all over the rest of the dog's body. Just going to make sure from this angle when he stands up, because a lot of times, first thing you see when they leave the grooming shop, they stand up and they want to paw at their mama's sleeve or whatnot at their pants legs. So make sure all this is clean. Then I'm going to move to the front leg. Now this is a trim you should be able to do pretty quick with these tools that we're talking about today. So make sure when you're doing the legs, I usually, especially if I'm going to do them really short, I'll hold the leg out as if he were moving towards me. So if he were running in motion, just pull that leg straight out. Then when I get to the foot area, I want to make sure I cut this, so I'll go up to his elbow and hold him by the elbow. That way I can get all across the top of that foot. Make sure you're really careful in this area. This is a really sensitive area and it's very easy to cut.
Now, the reason why you're hearing that little extra noise right there, especially going down where the dog is doing a little bit of jerking and going down the bone area, if the snap-on comb shifts a little bit and isn't sitting as squarely on the blade as it should, you'll hear that noise. And actually it's like metal on metal because the blade is actually, the snap-on comb is actually hitting the teeth of the blade. So sometimes you just have to stop and just readjust it a little bit. And it happens more on the closer blades. It very infrequently happens on the longer lengths. So it's usually the 4 snap-on comb that does happen with. But it's just, all you have to do is just readjust it a little bit.
Okay, I'm just going to switch to his other leg real quick.
Good boy, Rex.
And you can see I haven't had to take this blade off at all and clean out the hair in it. The hair basically just falls right out of this blade as you're using it. So it doesn't get clogged up like a lot of the snap-on combs on the market. They're very easy to work with, and it has saved me so much time as far as scissor work. I don't have to do much scissor work on my dogs at all now because I can use these snap-on combs.
And basically just do the feet and the head. And
yeah. And they start off, the snap-on combs start off pretty short. What is our shortest one?
It's the
red
number
one?
5, yeah, and it's 1/8 inch.
So it goes from 1/8 of an inch, which you can get a dog pretty short with that. And it goes all the way up to a number 1.
Well, it's actually the E, which leaves a 1 inch. So we have an E, the C leaves 7/8 of an inch, the A is 3/4 inch, and then we have the 0, which is probably my most popular. It's the one that I happen to use a lot. I like this on like standard poodle bodies. If I'm going to do a lamb trim, this is a really nice length, especially if you have a dog that tends to be a little bit on the thinner side. This gives a really nice plush finish. And this is a 5/8 inch. And then we have the peach or salmon color.
That's the one I use the most, is the peach.
The peach, that's a 1/2 inch. This is really good on a lot of your drop-coated breeds, like your Shih Tzus, Maltese, a lot of the drop-coated breeds that get the pet trims. The number 1 is a really nice maintenance trim. It leaves them looking nice and plush. It's a nice length. And then the number 2 is a 3/8 inch.
So this dog, it just gets a little personality trim. So they usually do his face short, and I still have on the 4, which is the 1/4 inch snap-on comb. And I'm just getting some of this length off. I think she said they usually do it with a 5.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go against the grain just to make this a little bit shorter.
And you can see how easy the KM2 is to maneuver in your hand. And another nice feature about the KM2 is that the body of the clipper does not get hot. So you never have to worry about it getting too hot in your hand, burning your hand or anything like that. And there's no vents that blow hair in your face when you're in the middle of clipping either. All the maintenance is really pretty self-contained. There's nothing that you have to oil on it. The only thing that you have to do with the KM2 is change your drive lever when it starts to wear out, when the clipper gets a little bit noisy.
Now I didn't do right around his eyes with the snap-on comb because I didn't want the ends of the snap-on combs pointing in towards his head. So I'm going to take the 5, so this is a 5F, and I'm going against the grain, which means the opposite direction of the way the coat normally grows.
They actually like his face more like a poodle, but they don't like it that close. So this is where we've had to experiment with him a little bit over the course of his groomings to figure out what they really like. And this length they happen to really like on him.
Now once I get my length set in, I'm going to come back, and I like to neaten up right around even though he's a little bit longer around his face, I still want to neaten up right around this lip. So anytime you're doing the clipper work around the face or around the lips, make sure I've got my opposite hand, I've got that skin stretched out pretty tight. And I'm just coming right along the lip line. This is going to help him when he eats and drinks. He's not going to get all that saliva built up. And it's not going to stay moist. It's going to stay a lot cleaner. Then I'm also going to get this fuzzy stuff right around his lip line, and I'm just skimming off right around the edge of his lips.
It's so much quicker and easier to do this with the Bravera than it is to try to get in there with scissors and scissor along the lip line. So even though you're using a longer blade length on the sides of the face, you can still get in there and get your lips nice and neat.
Now I etched his lips out with a 15 blade, and I'm just going to bump it back to a 10 blade and get right in the corner of his eyes, just so that's nice and clean. And that way we have a pretty clean face. And then I'm going to just switch it to the 9, which is a little bit longer. And I've got my finger over his eye, so I'm holding his eye closed so I don't take a chance of cutting him. And I'm just going to get all that hair right out from underneath his eye, just so it's nice and clean. Now one thing, you want to make sure that you keep your blades oiled. And on the Bravura, it's a little bit different than most of your blades. On a regular blade, you can actually take the bottom of the bottom blade or your cutting blade and push that aside and put your oil on it that way. On the Bravura or the Cremato or the Mosier blade, you just need to put a drop of oil on here. So usually I'll do this while the clipper's running just because it'll lubricate it better. But if you take your clipper oil while it's running, I'll just put a drop here and a drop here, and that will help lubricate it. That's on the 5-in-1 blade. Now on your regular blades, I usually take them off because you can slide this over. Excuse me. And then I'll put a drop right on the midline, which is the line that runs right across that this plastic piece touches. And then I'll put a drop on the ridge right here running across the back. I'll put a drop there, and then I'll put a drop right in the middle. And what that does, once I turn this clipper back on, excuse me, once I put this clipper back on, it'll lubricate it. Just by turning it on, my blade running back and forth is going to lubricate this blade, and that'll make sure everything's oiled up and it'll run a lot smoother. And if you don't have any oil on your blades, you get a lot of friction built up. That's what causes the heat. That's what causes your blades to get really hot. Now, you don't want to oil them while you're in the middle of clipping a dog, because if you put the oil on there and then you run it through the dog's coat, you're going to see the oil in the dog's coat. So I always put it on, like before I start my day. I always oil them at the end of the day also, and I'll let it run for a minute just to let that oil lubricate, and then I'll just take a paper towel and just wipe it down just to make sure no oil is on the blade itself, that might get on the dog.
You'll find that your blades are going to last a lot longer if you do keep them cleaned and oiled. So at the end of the day, I usually find is the best time to make sure that all your blades get cleaned. The nice thing with most of your Wahl kits is you get everything that you possibly need anyway. So with the clipper, you also get the neat little brush, and I just kind of push the blade off to one side, and brush all the hair out from in between. Sometimes you can even use a force dryer, which is what I do on the 5-in-1 blades, because this, you can't move that. This little piece right here, if you pull that back, it actually lifts the blade. It separates these two blades, so that helps you to get the hair out in between. But sometimes I'll even just take my force dryer and just kind of blow the hair out of it really well. And then again, with the clipper running, I find it's easier to just, with the clipper running, it spreads the oil a little bit better. Now, putting this blade on and off is actually really easy. A lot of people, they come to the shows and they'll say, how do you get that on? How do you take that off? There's a little tiny lip on the back end of the clipper, and it has a little notch right there that it sits, and it just snaps on. So it's just that easy. And taking it off, it's the same thing. You just push that straight back and it comes off. And they do actually sell replacements for this plastic piece.
Yes.
So this plastic piece right here can actually be replaced, because a lot of times what happens, if people just put their clipper down and it gets kicked off or rolls off the table, once that little black lever on the very back part here, once that breaks off, it's not going to attach to your clipper. Unless you have duct tape, because duct tape fixes everything. Right, Jay?
Yep. Now what I'm doing now, I'm just scissoring around the dog's foot. I've already set in all the length with my snap-on comb, so basically I just want to clean up right around the feet, so the feet, or the length of the feet actually match the length of the leg. And this is what, in some areas, they call this a kennel clip. What do y'all call it?
A kennel clip to me would be with poodle feet. And this would just be a 5 shave or a 4 shave. So that indicates that the feet are scissored the same length as the body and they're not shaved in between the toes. Another thing I had thought about when Jay was talking when he was doing the dog's face, these snap-on combs are also rounded on the edge, which a lot of the plastic ones weren't. When you're going down the dog's back, if you happen to hit a wrinkle, you can see them really jump from it because they were very, very pointy. I know a lot of people used to take something and actually wear down the edges, but these snap-on combs are very rounded here on the edges. They still glide through the coat, but they won't jab the dog. They're not sharp at all. And because they are metal, does not mean they heat up. They don't. They do not. The blade itself, the snap-on comb, does not get hot. Even if the blade underneath it has gotten hot, the comb does not get hot, so it doesn't hold the heat.
So, and those will save you so much time in the long run. I'm just going to skim over the top of the ears. This is our switchblade clipper. This is one of the newer clippers that we have out, and this, I really like the design of this. You can see it's narrow through here, and when you put it in your hand, it's just really easy to roll around. And this is curved. This piece on the switchblade is curved. I think it's probably the only clipper I've seen with this rounded end on it. And what happens is, as you go through the coat, the hair just basically slides off as you're clipping, so you don't get this huge buildup of hair on the front of your clipper. So as I clip through the coat, that's going to slide off, and it's just ergonomically, it's really nice in your hand. And the switch is underneath, so it has a variable speed underneath. It's not a high and a low speed. It's variable, so you can go from low, medium, all the way up to high. But I really like it for where the switch is positioned. It's easy to get to, and it's got a really nice feel to it, nice balance. So I'm going to turn it down on low, and always make sure you hold your finger, or the opposite hand, I'm holding the ear pretty tight so I can feel what I'm clipping. And I'm just going right over the top of this ear, just skimming some of this hair off, because we want to try to make everything blend in. We don't want it to make it look like a poodle top knot. I'm trying to blend everything in from the top knot all the way to the ear set. And this is what we're doing. It's just very basic. We're just trying to teach you some handling techniques of the clipper, you know, how to use the clipper, how to choose a blade, and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in further education as far as grooming DVDs, we have a whole set of Super Styling Session DVDs that you can purchase on our website, or you can go on our website and view them. And they're a little bit more detailed. They are strictly for pet grooming, but this is just a little bit more basic than what we normally do. So I'm going to comb everything forward on this guy, and I want to show off his eyes, so I'm going to scissor right around the front of his top knot, just so you can see his face. And then I'm going to scissor this right around to the edge. I'm going to hold this ear back. I'm trying to blend this into the side of his head, so I don't really want a lot of separation like we would on a poodle, because we didn't do his face really short. But I just basically want this to blend in.
Now, while Jay's doing a little bit of that, I wanted to just show you another product that Wahl now has, and this is it's a grooming caddy, and it's made by Kennel Gear and distributed by Wahl. Wahl owns Kennel Gear. This is a really nice, handy device for groomers. The nice thing is I put everything, that these squares here are designed to, it'll fit your snap-on combs perfect. On this side, I put usually my sprays, anything that I normally use. The Wahl air cleaner, by the way, is the best air cleaner on the market. It really dissolves wax and dirt and really does a nice job, and the ear smells really fresh and clean when you're done with it. But I can keep my nail clippers in here, forceps, your tools, anything that you have, you can have it nice and handy right here for the dog, so that you never have to walk away from your table. And safety is always the #1 issue. Unfortunately, all the hard work that groomers do, that kind of stuff doesn't get put on TV. It's when there's an accident in the shop, or something doesn't go quite right, is when they plaster it all over the TV and the news and all that. And so it ends up giving groomers a bad name. So safety has to be your #1 issue. The tools that we're using now make everything very safe. These have been tested and used by groomers. Usually we get to test things probably a year before they actually hit the market. So if there are any little kinks and things to work out, by the time the groomers actually get them, we've hopefully worked out any kind of problems that they might have. But so going back to safety, with this caddy, you can have everything right here, so you don't have to walk away from the table at all. So my nail clippers, I usually keep my cotton balls in one of the pockets. My Bravera will fit nicely in one. Your clipper will actually sit right inside here. Your combs can sit inside here. My brushes, so everything that I need will hang right. What do you need, brush?
Yeah.
Will hang right here in this little caddy. Now the only problem that I have with my caddy, because this is the table that I use, and the only problem that I have with my caddy is if I'm working on a large breed, like a standard poodle, and I'm scissoring the back end, this is going to be in my way. Well, it's got this neat little device here. It's got a little clip, a little safety lock on the side here, and you just kind of flick that with your finger, and this will lift up out of here. And this is a nice metal clamp here that goes with this here. So this will fit onto any size table. This can stay here. This isn't going to be in my way, but if I'm working on a large breed, I can just take this and move it off to the side. What a lot of people will do is you can actually buy just the bracket part here, and you can screw that onto your wall, and you can actually hang the caddy up on your wall too, or if you want to put it someplace else and get it out of your way. And then it locks back in place very nicely. Now, with this locking device, they also have dog dishes, which are really nice because they can fasten onto the side of a dog crate, and because of this little locking device here, you can't pull this out unless you move that lever with your finger. So it keeps it very nice and secure. It's got this little extra support right here, and it's just a very neat little tool. They also make a a smaller size caddy too, if you don't want to get into having the really big thing, and then you can use this and keep, especially when you're working on a difficult dog and you need to have everything right there at your hand's reach, but you don't want to have it on the table for fear that the dog is going to kick it off. So you just clip this onto the side of your table and you've got everything that you need right there. And you don't want to have it there all the time, you just unfasten the little bracket and take it off.
Okay, so those are basically some of the techniques we would use on a poodle, Bichon type coat, you know, something that's curly, something that stands up pretty well. You know, we wouldn't use these techniques on a drop coat, but this is our little guy for this demo.
Little Rex Denko.
And I left his tail. I don't know what they normally do with his tail, but I just scissored up the back of it and kind of gave him a cute little, some personality. Okay, this is our drop coated breed for today. This is Maybelline, and she's a little Shih Tzu. And what we mean by a drop-coated breed is the hair actually, it doesn't stand up like a poodle or a Bichon. It actually flows, it drops, it falls in the direction more towards the ground or towards the table. So as this hair grows and it gets some length on it, it's going to drop down this way. So we wouldn't use the same methods we use with the poodle or a Bichon, or like the dog we just did for the DVD. We wouldn't use that same technique on a drop-coated breed as we would on a curly-coated breed.
Okay, so this is my little Maybelline Boucher, and I'm gonna use the Competition Series 5F blade made by Wahl, and I'm gonna start right up behind her ears. So basically, on a dog like this, what I want to do is I kind of take everything from the back part of her ears and hold all of this stuff up out of my way, and I'm gonna come around her head. And as Jay just said, following the way her coat grows, and I'm just going to let the clipper and the blade do the work. So I'm holding the weight of this clipper in my hand. I don't have to press down hard on her.
The reason we're using a 5F blade instead of a 5 skip tooth is the F blade is a finishing blade. It's going to give you a lot smoother cut. We normally, in fact, I don't even think we have one here. The skip tooth blades, we surely don't want to teach new groomers to use them. There's a point and a purpose for the skip tooth blades, but general grooming, you're going to use your F blades, you know, and your snap-on comb blade, or your snap-on combs as far as your blades go. So we wouldn't use a skip tooth on a dog like this at all.
Got around her head done. So now I'm just going to follow the way her coat grows.
If you'll notice with her opposite hand, she's holding the skin tight like we did on the dog before. So that gives you a really smooth cutting surface. Especially on these drop-coated breeds, they tend to get track marks really easily. So as you're going through the coat, if that skin's not tight, you're going to get a lot of chops in the coat, and then it's not going to look even. You're going to spend a lot of time going over it trying to even it out. But if you'll notice, if you'll watch Sue's hand and her movement, she's very light with the clipper. If you're heavy-handed with the clipper, or you're trying to force the clipper through the coat, that's when your grooming it's not gonna be up to par. It's gonna look really ragged, really rough. But these blades, if you have a good clipper and you have a good blade and your blades are oiled, your blades are sharp, the clipper should be able to run that blade through the coat, and the blade should be doing the work. You shouldn't have to force anything through the coat, especially on a dog that's clean like this.
Now, in my shop, what I like to do is I clean the dogs. All the dogs go into the tub and they get their bath before they actually get clipped. Unless it's a dog that is severely matted and is going to be stripped down. But anything that's going to be shaved down, I just find that it makes your blades last a lot longer if you're cutting clean hair as opposed to dirty hair. So, and Jay is a mobile groomer, so doing it mobile, he does it a little different. He's really on a time schedule. He doesn't have the water capacity that we have in our stationary shops, so he's got to be a little bit more conservative when it comes to that. So what you usually do, Jay, is pre-clip and get a lot of the excess hair off, right?
For instance, like this dog, I would go ahead and do my clipper work before the bath, and of course I would go over it after the bath, but I get as much hair off as I could before the bath because that'll save me drying time, and you know, it's just a lot faster for me. But one thing I will do, just like she said, you don't want to put your clippers on dirty hair, you don't want to put your scissors on dirty hair. I have a set of blades I use for the dirty dog dogs, for my prep work, and then when I get them out of the tub, I use a different set of blades because, the new blades and the blades I use on the clean dogs, they'll cut a lot smoother. So basically, I'm just what we call roughing in the dog before the bath, not trying to make it neat or even. I'm just trying to get a lot of that bulk off, so it makes it easier for me to dry and easier for me to clip afterwards. If you'll notice, Sue's always going in the direction that the coat lays. We can't stress that enough, especially with the drop coated breeds. Now, we've done a lot of seminars and been to a lot of seminars where people will teach you to clip against the grain, or you're actually going in the opposite direction that the coat lays. And what happens is you're pushing all this hair in a position that it doesn't normally grow. So this natural coat growth, it grows flat. So as you push it back, if you're cutting against the grain, it's going to cut it shorter and it's going to leave a lot of track marks. So that's the reason we recommend always going in the direction that the coat lays. You'll just get a lot smoother finish. It's a lot quicker. You have a lot less to go over afterwards to try to fix.
Okay, skimming down her belly. Especially on your female dogs, you always want to be careful because they've got the nipples. You want to be careful. So that's why it's also important to really know that you've got the weight of the clipper in your hand and you're not pushing a lot of weight down on the dog's body. Now I'm just going to come back here. And again, like Jay said, the way I'm actually pulling her skin tight with this opposite hand. And just follow the way the coat grows. And more times than not, if you look at the hair on the side of the dog's body, this hair doesn't grow straight down. It kind of grows at a little bit of an angle coming back. So a lot of times you'll see dogs that have those really definite clipper lines in their body. And that's because people are cutting against the grain, and they're actually cutting that hair a little bit shorter than what it should be. So try to always really look and see the way that the coat grows and follow that.
And one nice thing about the switchblade clipper and the KM2 clipper is they come with a 16-foot cord, so it allows you to get around the table. You don't get tangled up a lot. You have plenty of cord to maneuver around. You aren't on a short cord where you have to keep going back and readjusting your, the way you're positioning your clipper and that sort of thing. And this is basically just a short pet maintenance trim we would do. I mean, a lot of the dogs come in the summertime, the people want them nice and short, and this is just a real easy maintenance clip. They don't have to come in that often, and the customer can maintain it at home.
Okay, and like Jay had done with our last dog, Rex. Oh, just kick up the speed a little. I'm just going to kind of lift her from the back and just let the clipper glide right off the top of her foot. I'm doing around the hock bone and the knee area. It's a little bit trickier to try to get that nice and neat. So you might have to just touch it up a little bit with scissors around the bony areas of the dog. Okay, and I'm going to lift up the opposite leg to get the inside of this leg, because she is pretty short-legged, so it's kind of hard to lift her leg up high enough to get the inside of her leg. So if you lift up the opposite leg, you're able to get in there and get that nice. That's a good girl, Maybelline. Okay, so I want to just hold that skin tight.
And this is something, holding the skin tight is something, once you do it for a little while, you just get in the habit. It's just a natural thing that you do when you're clipping. And I can't tell you how much difference it will make on your clipper work. It'll be so much smoother by doing it that way.
Good girl, May. Her mom is actually a groomer. She used to work for me, and she doesn't do it anymore, so she prefers to bring her in and have us do it. Which is a nice compliment. Okay, the same thing. I'm going to lift up this back leg and just let the clipper run right off the top of her foot. One thing that you want to be careful on a lot of these small breeds, as I'm working around the dog, I always feel for the dew claws, especially the rare dew claws. I mean, I just feel that if at all possible, all dogs' dew claws should be removed when they're babies, because they just end up causing problems. But it is very common for a lot of these small breeds. A lot of our Shih Tzus have the dew claws or even double dew claws on the back feet. So sometimes they're those very dangly ones. So you always want to feel for those before you're shaving down the dog's leg, because you can catch those in between your teeth of your blade very easily. Okay, so once I have her body work done, I'm going to switch to my Cremato.
Oh, see, I read your mind.
And I'm going to put this on, I'm going to have it on the 10 blade setting. And what I like to do is to just go under here and clean off her belly area. But this little piece of skin right here, I can just kind of take that clipper and very easily glide along there. And that just kind of gives her a little bit more polished up finish, and it helps it just kind of really neaten up that underside area. When you leave those little long hairs, you can see all the little fine scraggly hairs sticking out. So you can just kind of come down with your 10 blade and just scoop that out. And then I do the same thing in the armpit area. And again, I'm just going to use my 10 blade. I'm just going to kind of come in and very gently letting my clipper do the work very easily. I'm just going to skim off some of that elbow hair and neaten up the armpit area so that when she puts her leg down, you're not going to see this stuff sticking out underneath. It's a good girl, Maddie. See, so this stuff right here, you can just come in with your Cremato, your Bravera, your Arco, the 5 adjustment blade, and just skim out that little bit of armpit hair. And it neatens up that underline area nice. And the same thing with her belly. Just clean this up under here.
We always say when we do these seminars, your prep work is the most important part of the groom. If your dog's not bathed properly, not conditioned properly, if you don't do the nails, do the pads, do the underside, if all that's not nice and neat, the rest of your groom won't be either. It doesn't matter how good of a finisher you are, the prep work is so important. So it's always good to use a good shampoo, a good conditioner. Your drying technique is important. When we're drying a dog like this, we would never come in from behind and blow the water out of the dog's coat in the opposite direction that it grows. We always want to blow everything down in the direction that the coat lays and the direction that the coat grows. That way when we clip it, it's a lot easier for us to manage the coat and to be able to clip through this coat without making a lot of marks in the coat.
Now here she's got a series of swirls and cowlicks and everything. You want to be careful when you're doing around the dog's rectum. I never actually put the clipper right on the rectum. So what I do is I'm barely touching. I'm just kind of taking my blade almost in a stand-up position rather than in a flat position, and just skimming the hair away from the rectum. The rectum area is very, very sensitive, so you want to be careful. If you put the clipper right on there, it's very easy to nick them. So, and then I'm going to do her private areas, and so what I do is I hold her tail and her leg in my hand, and that helps me to support her whole back end. And I'm just going to go in and kind of skim out this area here. So she's all nice and neat and clean underneath. So her sanitary is now clean. I did it with the 10 blade so as not to irritate her at all, and she won't be scooting and all that stuff. Now I'm just going to switch to my Chrome Mini. Now this is the blade that's a little bit narrower than the Mini Arco, and it's a 30 blade, and it's going to work really nicely for getting in between her little tiny feet. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of take the clipper and edge along her pads.
And this is a great little clipper you can put in your pocket after you're finished with your dogs and your dogs go out. If you happen to see something that's sticking out of place, you can whip this little clipper out and trim it up, fix it up right before they go out the door. And they run very quiet, so it's not going to startle the dog. It's good for the little toy breeds that tug and pull on their feet or around their face. It's a nice little quiet clipper.
Okay, and we're just going to scissor up around her feet real quick. That's a good girl. Okay, that's a good girl. We've already removed a lot of the hair with the clipper, so it makes this part a lot safer and easier to do with your straight shears. It's okay, girl. Tiny little legs. Okay, she's got a lot of little cowlicks and stuff on her back feet, on her back legs.
It's okay, girl.
You're good for everything, Maybelline.
You know, it's funny because so many times, like, I was at a pet store the other day and I was looking in the window where you can see them grooming, and so many times you watch people grooming because that's something that we do and it's our trade, and you can tell they've been taught totally the wrong way to clip a dog. So in this video, we basically just want to teach you the right methods and the right techniques to get you a good foundation when you start grooming, and you know, the direction that you should clip in, the way you should hold your clippers, you know, the maintenance, what blades to use, and that sort of thing. So hopefully what we taught you with these last couple of dogs will help get you pointed in the right direction.
Okay. Now, on Maybelline's head, her mom likes her head really short. I mean, you can see, you can't even see this dog's eyes or any expression on her face at all. So I'm going to go to my Cremato, and I have this on I'm going to do this on a 10-blade setting, and I'm just going to scoop out in front of her eyes. And I always scoop away from the dog's eyes, especially if it's a dog you're really not that sure about, and you're not sure, you know, if they're going to jump or you know, cause you to poke them in the eye. So I'm going to take this and I'm scooping away from her eye. Good girl. And that will just help to clean up this area here that tends to get really caked up and runny on the dogs. Now they like her to have a pretty short head and face. So what I'm going to do with her is I'm going to skim off some of this using a snap-on comb.
Now we're going to use a 1/2-inch snap-on comb, which is the number 1 or the peach under the 30 blade.
Okay, so you can see the way, because she is a drop-coated breed, she's got this part down the middle of her head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my snap-on comb and I'm going to follow the way that hair is growing. Okay, and I'm actually going to skim down her ears and everything. So this stuff that falls off the back of her head, I'm going to take off with the snap-on comb. Follow the way that hair grows. I'm going to hold her ear back out of my way and just kind of skim some of this stuff off. Same thing on this side. Good girl. Come underneath here, skim off some length with my snap-on comb from underneath. Who's sneezing?
One thing about Wahl Clipper, if you ever have any problems with your blades, clippers, anything that Wahl sells, their customer service department is second to none. So if you call the 800 number, let them know what's going on. I mean, we definitely stand behind all of our products. So if you do get something and it's not up to par, or isn't working satisfactory for you, then give us a call and let us make it right, because we surely don't want to have somebody out there with a clipper or something that they've had a bad experience with. So they're very good about that.
Okay, now I'm just going to make some cute little visor on her. And I'm using my thinning shears to do this, and the reason I'm doing that is it's going to give it a little bit more natural look, but the thinning shears will actually help to catch that hair a little bit better. So a lot of times when you try to do this with straight shears, as you cut, the hair kind of slides out of the shears. Unless you've got a shear with a serrated edge, a lot of times the hair will kind of slide out of the shear, and you ended up with jagged edges. But if you use your thinning shears, and I'm using them at a little bit of an angle, so you can see that I'm holding them out at a little bit of an angle, which is going to make the hair a little shorter closer to her eye and a little bit longer on top. And that's going to give her a really cute little visor look. I'm going to comb everything from the back of her head forward. And I'm going to angle that right back to the outside corner of her eye. Okay, now this hair right in front of her lip, very carefully. I'm going to take that stuff off because she's only going to suck that back into her mouth anyway. Now a lot of times on your Shih Tzus, you get this one piece of hair here in the center that always seems to stick out. No matter how many times you've gone back over it, you always get that one little hanger right there. Well, what I usually do is I'll pull her top skull back and just go in there with my thinning shears and take that hair right out of the stop. And it's that little hair and that little curve right there that ends up sticking back into the face. Okay, so I've combed everything forward and we've trimmed a really cute visor, and now we can see Maybelline, what a cute little face she has. But then I'm going to take everything back. I'm going to bring the ear forward, comb everything on her top skull back, and I'm going to take this off with my thinning shears. And so that way, no matter which way she puts her head, whether she's sniffing the ground or she's looking up at Mom when she comes to pick her up, the hair is going to fall and it's going to stay nice and neat. So that's why it's important to comb the hair back and forth in different directions. The same thing with this side. I'm just going to hold her ear forward, and all this junky stuff that's hanging off behind her ear, I'm just going to kind of use this and kind of follow a circle back down into her chin.
And if you're a new groomer, these thinning shears are a lot more forgiving than a pair of straights or a pair of curves when you're going around this area. Because once you make a mistake with a straight or a curve, it's there. There's basically no way to erase it. And with this, you take more strokes or more swipes at it with the thinning shear, but it looks a lot more natural. And if you do make a mistake, it's a lot easier to blend it in.
Okay, and then I'm just going to do a nice short little face on her. I'm going to kind of follow this little lip line right here. So any of this stuff that's going to curve into her mouth and get caught and wrapped around her teeth and everything, I'm going to take that off. If you comb everything back, good girl. Don't need that. I find if you comb this hair back here from her nose straight back towards her eyes, this stuff that's sticking up right here, you take that off with your thinning shears, that way when the dog pants and opens its mouth, you're not going to have that big bulk of hair sticking out on the back corner of the mouth into the cheek. Okay, just going to clean up in front of her ear a little bit. And you can also come in this area right here. A lot of times what I'll do, just to kind of keep this area clean, is a lot of these dogs with drop ears tend to get bad ear infections. So I'll just go in with my Chromato and just skim the hair on the very inside part of the ear, just that very, you know, I'm not getting into the flap of the ear at all. I'm just doing the very front part of the ear, and that just kind of takes away a little bit of that hair and helps the air to get into the air to get into the ear better. Okay, and then I'm just gonna, sweetheart, just take a little bit of length off of her ears. We've got a real short head, so we're not going to leave long hanging dangly ears. We're going to trim those ears so they blend in with the rest of her head. And again, I'm doing them with my thinning shears because it just gives it a softer, a little bit more natural look. Good girl, May. Okay, so that way her ears kind of blend into her chin hair. You know, I don't want them to, if they hang below, it's going to distract from her cute little face. So I want the ears to just be kind of level with the length of the hair that we've left on her chin. Okay, so that's our cute little face. On her tail, you know, I was just remembering balance, so whatever you do to the front you want to do to the back. If you do a really short head, then you're going to do a short tail. You don't want to leave a long flowing tail if you've got a real short head, and you don't want to do a short tail if you have an extra full head. So normally your Shih Tzu is going to carry their tail up over their back, so I'm just going to take my thinning shears and just neaten up this area a little bit. Okay. And a lot of times what you can do with your tail, if you hold up the tail and comb everything down, anything that falls like below the rectum, I'll take off with my thinning shears. And this way when the dog does squat to go to the bathroom, it's going to keep this area nice and clean. If you leave this really long through here, when she squats to go to the bathroom, all of this extra hair is going to be hanging in the way and end up very messy. Okay, there's Maybelline, our cute little Shih Tzu shave.